listener, and thank you for tuning in to the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast. My name is Madeline Johnson.
I'm Julian Barthold.
I'm Emilio Tostado.
And what you're going to be listening to is something that later got a lot more fleshed out, which essentially is just the three of us who know each other from working together at a Midtown Manhattan music school, just hanging back and talking about movies, which is something that we love to do.
Yeah, it was something that was an outgrowth of us hanging out at the end of the night and figured it would be fun to see, in a recorded fashion.
So much for tuning in. We are here to discuss two classic sci-fi horror action movies. We are talking about Ridley Scott's Alien and James Cameron's Aliens, or Alien $. We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to start off by getting into some specifics about our first film, Alien, and then we'll get into some comparing and contrasting of these two movies, what we love about them, things maybe that we don't love, or things that have grown on us over time. But we're going to start with Alien. So, Emilio, take it away.
Fantastic. So it's the summer of 1977. And there's this little movie called Star Wars that's released, and people think, okay, great, this is a fun little adventure movie, but it does gangbusters and completely changes movies forever. The blockbuster becomes king. It's really solidified now. Jaws came out a few years before, but now this movie is like telling you, no, man, we need some big tentpole movies for the summer, and sci-fi is back and bigger than ever. 20th Century Fox, that had just released Star Wars, is like, yo, people, green light all of the sci-fi projects that we've got, and one of them is this first movie. We're talking about Alien, scripted by a guy named Dan O'Bannon, and it happens to read a little bit more like a horror movie than sci-fi adventure, but it is sci-fi nonetheless. So it's obviously in the future. We are following the crew of a commercial space freighter called the Nostromo. We've got the captain, Dallas, who's played by Tom Skerritt, Officer Ripley, who's played by Sigourney Weaver, the navigator, Lambert, who's played by Veronica Cartwright, the executive officer, Kane, who's played by John Hurt, a science officer named Ash, played by Ian Holm, and a couple of wisecracking engineers / servicemen in Brett, played by Harry Dean Stanton, and Parker, played by Yaphet Kotto. We meet the crew upon discovering that its course home has been interrupted to attend to a signal that's coming from a mysterious ship on a planet labeled LV-426. So when they go to investigate, Executive Officer Kane is attacked by a strange alien life form that has attached itself to his face. And while the crew is understandably concerned for his safety, there is cautious optimism that he will be okay. And a bunch of quarantine rules are broken or ignored. So this face-hugging alien eventually detaches himself from Kane and dies. And for a hot second, Kane actually seems okay. He resumes his duties. He joins his fellow crew for a meal. But we soon discover that Kane has been implanted with the seed of a different yet related alien being, one that decides to make his presence known quite dramatically by bursting out of Kane's chest and disappearing in the ship's many corridors. So before long, this little baby alien, chest-bursting alien, has grown into a full-blown nightmare of a creature. And the crew gets picked off one by one as it tries to subdue it. As the dwindling crew's hopes for catching it turn to hopes that they can kill it, and soon turn to hopes of doing anything they can to survive, Ripley emerges as the level-headed leader of the bunch. And it's her, Ripley, who has the dramatic showdown with the alien creature, finally getting the better of it by blasting it out into space from her escape pod. After what feels like days of panic, fear, assertive action, and fast thinking, Ripley can finally breathe a sigh of relief and curl up for an indefinite hypersleep with her fellow survivor, a feline named Jonesy. And that's Alien.
Yes.
For you guys.
I just need to start by saying I love Jonesy dearly, obviously, but also my parents, when I was a teenager, had just this lovable ginger cat that reminds me so much of Jonesy. So I look at Jonesy and I think of my parents' cat, Rosie, and I just get a little teary.
Rosie, Jonesy, there's definitely a connection there, I'd say. Yeah, I mean, sweet cat. I will say, I mean, I'm not a massive pet person, so there is a part of me that is somewhat surprised the lengths to which Ripley goes to save this cat.
But it's interesting because at one point, kind of later on, it seems like the alien doesn't have much interest in Jonesy, actually. Like she leaves him in a carrier in the corridor, and you see the alien kind of come up over behind. You get this shot of him behind the carrier. And then later, Ripley just finds Jonesy fine, still there. So
the alien probably did the math to realize that
I'm not getting
gained nothing
out of
from
this.
actually doing it.
I can't implant in this.
Yeah.
It's not big enough, and if I can't eat it, really.
Yeah. It's also in a pretty nice container, I
Yeah.
think, probably pretty well protected.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, man. I mean, it is, cats seem to be doing pretty well in this movie. And later on in Aliens, I love how they slyly write Jonesy out of the movie.
Yeah.
They trade out the cat for a human child.
Exactly. Well, as is probably evidenced, we all are pretty much in agreement that Alien is pretty rad.
Fantastic.
It's a really great movie. It seems to straddle that line between adventure and horror, and almost sort of like has an art house feel to it. The way the camera moves, the way it's like almost sort of like a play in space, right? It's like this self-contained little project with 7 people, and it just suddenly it's like almost like an Agatha Christie,
Because it feels like it's mostly in real time.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I would totally agree.
I think a good place to start with this might be talking about the film landscape into which Alien emerged. And of course, we set the scene with Star Wars. Thank you, Emilio, for doing that. And of course, given the timing of Alien's release, that is naturally the first place to look for comparison. But Star Wars, in so many ways, feels like a polar opposite to Alien. Because Alien, well, where to begin with how it's different? I mean, the tone of the movie is so much darker than Star Wars. Star Wars really, it's a movie that has a happy ending. It's it's got a very vibrant feel to it. It's that's a movie that really is a rollicking good time. And Alien, this is really kind of like a much more stone cold sort of story.
Star Wars is a family film.
Exactly.
Alien is not.
Alien is a death march.
Yeah, not to mention, to put it quite simply, Star Wars is PG and Alien is very much an R-rated movie.
Totally. And like a friendly PG, not like
Yeah.
Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Right.
PG.
It's not a reach, yeah.
Yeah.
Like Star Wars is a very square PG. And then, I think I like that you said it had kind of an art house feel to it, because Alien is a movie that I think you can see a little more comparison between that and some, or like antecedents from a few years before, namely in my mind, 2001: A Space Odyssey,
Definitely,
and Andrei Tarkovsky's film Solaris. Which it's been many years since I've seen that. It's not super fresh in my mind, and Solaris is a very brainy movie. It's like definitely you don't get it all in one sitting, but aesthetically speaking, there are definitely some similarities.
I would say definitely aesthetically, the kind of the quiet tone of the film. I mean, for all the bombast that eventually takes place in Alien, the movie actually spends a lot of time sort of at this simmer where you're kind of just slowly getting to know the environment, and that you're slowly getting to know the crew, and it's not jumping straight in, even though it kind of does. Like it does start right away. It also seems to take its time.
It's definitely a slow burn. I mean, you don't really see any aliens until 30 minutes in, do you think? Like, I mean, they touch down on I wrote down the name of the planet, LV-426.
Yeah.
They touch down there fairly early on when they get the distress beacon, but it takes a while. Like, very slow moving to get to this kind of crash ship with all the eggs. Like all of this takes a long time.
Sure.
Yeah, and you don't see the xenomorph properly until maybe about an hour into the movie.
Yeah.
Maybe even more. One of the things that I was surprised by, especially in comparing the two movies, is that Alien definitely takes like a Jaws style approach to showing the creature, in that it only seems to show it from the shadows or from angles where you only kind of get a sense of its size, or maybe just a real quick shot of the extending bit that comes out of its maybe mouth region. And so it has this
Mini mouth.
Exactly, the mini mouth.
Oh, that's probably, like, in my personal opinion, the creepiest thing about the xenomorph.
And its
Yeah.
teeth also. It's not just that it has two mouths, it's that it has like steel looking teeth.
Totally. But it you really only seem to see that portion, or those little portions of it. It's kind of like the little glimpses are supposed to sort of give you this greater picture of what it is. I think the first time you see the alien is when it's attacking Lambert. It has that weird moment where you kind of see the whole thing kind of moving.
Yeah, because
ahead.
we talked about how Kane, John Hurt's character, like he doesn't get killed by the xenomorph. He gets killed when the like baby xenomorph bursts out of his chest. And then the next person to die is Brett, Harry Dean Stanton's character. And I really love the way that they go about his death, because you see it in the reaction in Jonesy's eyes, which is crazy. It's like Harry Dean Stanton, Brett has been looking for Jones the cat and is just like wandering around like meowing, which was very fun for me. And he finally finds Jones, and then the xenomorph like kind of comes down and takes him, and you just see like Jonesy's eyes and
freaked out.
And at that moment you realize, because Brett is only the second member of the crew to be picked off by the xenomorph, this is the moment when you realize this xenomorph has grown rapidly.
One of my tiny nitpicks in the movie is how fast it goes from being this little slithery, not little, but slithery thing that could fit in someone's chest to, I don't know, like definitely bigger than a full-grown
I
human.
would be interested in seeing the like growth cycle of this alien, because it seems like it takes like an hour to go from like baby to full grown.
Yeah, pretty incredible. I wonder if that means it has a shorter lifespan too.
It's true.
Yeah,
Like,
maybe we can just wait it out.
Yeah,
maybe it'll be
maybe
dead
if-
in like 2 days.
Maybe it's like Jack, the Robin Williams movie.
Yeah.
But just and in space, time, I don't know, doesn't exist the same way.
Or maybe time is the same, and this is a creature that just has a short lifespan, and because of that, that's why it's so vicious. Has a lot to do in that short lifespan.
I think that's a good read.
Yeah, but imagine if like creatures that have really short lifespans on Earth are like that.
Yeah.
Oh gosh,
Yeah.
like
fruit
fleas
flies or
fruit flies.
fleas,
Yeah, mayflies. But yeah, so, and actually to go back to the point you made, Emilio, about Jaws, I mean, it's, we've already discussed sort of the sci-fi surroundings into which Alien enters. And this is also a period when the sci-fi genre is becoming, not just because of Star Wars, it's becoming more esteemed generally. I would track that more to 2001: A Space Odyssey, 11 years before, where, sci-fi, it's clear now it's not like a B-movie genre. This is not a cheap thrill. This can be an eloquent sort of
elegant type of thing. Yeah,
exactly.
Totally.
This can be like a highbrow
Totally,
sort of
yeah.
entertainment. And I think, I don't know if horror follows quite the same trajectory at the same time, but it's certainly, horror is having a heyday too.
Totally.
And then Ridley Scott has said on record that, he wanted Alien to kind of be a meeting of the aesthetics of Star Wars with something like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And then also when you think about what's out at the time, I mean, Jaws we already brought up, and that's important to mention as well because it is a creature feature.
Yeah.
Where the antagonist is not a human, it's just this beast that has the very, simple goal to just primal urge to kill. And then the other movie of that time that I would think to bring up is Halloween.
Totally.
Released
the year before.
Yeah, not even a full year before, like maybe more like 8 months before Alien came out. And I don't know if the crew making Alien or anyone involved in it could have fully been aware of Halloween in the process. But it's remarkable some similarities that those movies have where, in the antagonist that it is kind of this, Michael Myers is not, Michael Myers is a human being. There's something psychological there that maybe there's more that can be understood than with the xenomorph.
Totally. And then I think probably what you're about to get to, or maybe a little more, is that both of those movies have that kind of final girl element to it, right?
Yeah.
Where Halloween rather memorably ends with Jamie Lee Curtis being spared or being crafty enough to get the better of Michael Myers in that moment. The same way that Ripley, Sigourney Weaver's character in Alien, also bests the alien xenomorph at the end of this movie. And so it does seem to be kind of a moment where the female character can become the triumphant one in the films. And there are definitely examples, I think, in previous years of characters and female protagonists who end up kind of being the star feature of a movie.
Yeah,
But
like you referenced Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is
It's
another
another one.
classic final girl
Yep.
scenario.
Black Christmas, which I know I've talked to you guys a bunch about. That also had very famously Olivia Hussey's character in that movie is also a rather formative final girl. It's funny, like I was trying to think of other kind of sci-fi-ish movies that have a like female lead that's sort of like the heroine, and the only one that I could really think of before this one, and I could be very wrong, is Barbarella,
Okay.
which is very different.
Haven't seen
and is
that.
going for a very different thing.
I should note as well that I haven't technically seen the Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Black Christmas. But I mean, what Ridley Scott said about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre it's an easy fact to look
Yeah,
up.
and that's another
Yeah.
movie where it's a group that's being picked off
Right,
slowly. And I think that the difference for me and Ripley as a final girl is that she, I think, has agency through the entire movie. Whereas oftentimes some of these other characters, like they are ultimately victims through much of the film, and then we'll sort of have a turn at a certain point where they finally can sort of overcome the monster that's chasing them. But Ripley from the beginning is the most competent person on this ship.
Yes.
When they send out the three, it's Kane and Dallas and Lambert. When they send them out and they come back with the baby alien attached to Kane's face,
The face hugger.
yes, the face hugger. Ripley is like, no, you cannot come in. And they're like, let us in. And she's like, no, like and I wrote it down, and it's like, if we break quarantine, we all die. And she knows this from the get, but the science officer, Ash, who has some ulterior motives that we find later, he lets them in anyway. But she was always the most competent. She was always looking out for the greater good and for herself.
Yeah, you get the sense that if Ripley was in charge, then none of this would have happened.
Absolutely.
Certainly the most pragmatic member of the group. And worth noting too that when the movie begins, it's kind of hard to ignore this if you like have any sort of surface level knowledge of the movie going in, but you don't get the sense, if you're completely fresh to the movie, you don't get the sense even that she's going to be the main character.
Totally. She's not even first in the credits.
Right.
I think
Tom Skerritt is.
Tom Skerritt is first in the credits.
Who I think at that point had a lot more visibility. And I think Sigourney Weaver, this is definitely one of the first
early on.
Leading roles that she had in the movie. So
Yeah.
totally. It's a little bit of a bait and switch. And I think the
Yeah.
movie even plays on that a little bit,
Yeah.
where the Dallas character is sort of positioned as
He's the captain.
one. Yeah. And you're sort of kind of waiting for him to kind of be the one to, if you're kind of thinking about film history at this point, he's set up to kind of be, I think, the one early on, but then very quickly it starts to shift.
Yeah.
And then you think almost sort of in some ways too, Yaphet Kotto is going to sort of be the one to also take control of things. And in a lot of ways, he kind of does.
He seems like the second most competent
He
after
definitely
Ripley.
and he also
Yeah.
seems like the one with the most moxie.
Yeah, and
He's
he
the one-
seems to have the most practical skills. Like, they're all just sort of waiting around for him and Brett to fix the ship. Like, none of them know how to get out of there.
I definitely love, though. That's one of the things that I really do dig about Alien is that the environment that it takes place in is meant to be very blue collar.
Yeah,
and I think
definitely.
that's one of the things that really is very attractive and seems to age really well about this movie, is that when you watch it, you're not watching a bunch of people in like space suits and it's like, it is literally like a truck going through space. It's sort of a futuristic version of that.
Yeah.
So Brett's wearing like Hawaiian shirts and it's just like super loose and chill. And so it really feels like a bunch of truckers who are, it just so happens that, their version of truckers is they have to have a whole crew of people.
Yeah.
And that they can be very autonomous amongst one another, but they also can just, crack wise and kind of bust each other's balls, and that it's very much like you're being dropped into the drudgery of that type of job, right? There are the people who steer the ship, but then there are also the people who just have to keep the ship operational, and that seems to be them. And they're a little bit of comedic.
Definitely comedic relief.
Yeah.
Well, that's another thing that's very different from Star Wars, too. While, I mean, certainly there are blue-collar characters in the Star Wars universe, you don't really get them in this kind of focus. Every main character, every fully developed character in Star Wars is some kind of type from, like the sort of serials that George Lucas was drawing from in one way or another.
And Star Wars has kind of like, it has the chosen one thing,
Exactly,
you're our only hope. Whereas like your point from before, really, when we're watching this film, any of these people could have been the person to get out in theory. It didn't necessarily have to be her.
But she does earn it.
She definitely
earns it.
She definitely earns it. And I love that they choose to make it Ripley. But if it was, what was Parker? If it was Parker, that would make sense too.
Yeah. It also, I think at the time, that would have been a pretty cool ending.
Yeah.
And a pretty forward-thinking ending as well.
Yeah.
To have a character like him be the one who gets to blast that alien in outer space. Yeah, I mean, this movie is just really incredible. And one thing going back to it as well, and something I definitely want to pick up on when we shift gears more into aliens, but man, the soundtrack of Alien is bonkers, man. It's just so good. And reading about it, I was really exciting because Jerry Goldsmith, the composer, that guy was very prolific. I mean, and at the helm of a ton of incredible soundtracks for very recognizable and successful films. There are some reports out there that his score was heavily edited, and that there was a little bit of contention, surrounding the final product. But boy, I mean, what was actually recorded is pretty incredible, and there's a lot of interesting instrumentation. There's like didgeridoos, and there's like an Indian conch shell, and there's this really cool thing too I realized, which is there's this like rattling sound that takes place through a lot of the really tense moments of the score that are meant to also be paired with what I presume to be sort of alien attacks. And that rattling is so funny because I always thought that was some part of the sound design of the alien, but it's actually part of the score, which I find to be really pretty incredible. But yeah, man, I mean, the score in this movie is really one for the ages. Really cool. And I think it sits really well too, like if you just sort of put it on and just sort of do some work to it or something. It's great, man. It's really, really good.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, where there is more conventional instrumentation in it, there's a lot of dissonance too.
Totally.
So I remember once a professor of mine in college made a point that I never forgot about dissonance in film scores, which is that what seems experimental, just on its own can work so well in a film score. That people, what is considered niche in normal spheres of music, people catch on to it when it's in a film score.
Absolutely. And
the example that was given, when that college professor told me that was Psycho. And I think he mentioned Jaws shortly after that, and Alien is certainly another example of that.
But yeah, both Psycho and Jaws, I don't know if this is what you're going to get to, they have the minor second or flattened ninth interval.
Yeah.
But in Jaws, it's literally one half step away. But in Psycho, the shrieking strings, there's like a pretty big jump between those octaves, which gives it its dissonance. But it's very recognizable, and the dissonance is like it sounds very striking when it hits, obviously.
Yes. Whereas, like in Alien, if I remember correctly, I think it has a little more of a diminished thing going on. A lot of minor thirds stacked, or if not stacked, kind of like one motif will happen in one register, and then it will be played a minor third away. Either lower or higher. And I would probably have to listen to it a little more closely to completely ascertain that, but that's my sense memory of it.
If there was not a moment where we were also reminding people that we are guitar teachers,
Exactly.
This might be one of them.
Yeah. Another thing with the score of Alien is for how iconic it is, it's kind of sparse. There are some significant stretches of the movie with no music at all.
Because I think that really helps to build the tension
Certainly.
and the silence of space.
But
I mean, the tagline of the movie is "In space, no one can hear you scream."
Yeah.
But also to create the ennui of that environment that, remember these are blue collar workers, their life is, it seems like if not for the alien, their life is pretty boring out there.
Totally.
Yeah, it's like you see Dallas listening to like a Mozart score like once, and and the thought is like, how much music do they get access to out here?
Totally. And I mean, notably too, I think the chest bursting scene, there is no non-diegetic music there. There's no score that's placed over that. So you have to sit with all the very uncomfortable feelings that scene brings up, which I think is another hallmark of Alien is the creature design and the sort of origin of it, and how just rooted in sexuality it is. I mean, it is like unmistakable. But I do think that how it's rooted in human sexuality is something that is oddly like a really inspired choice.
Yeah, and this is also in an age when we're starting to see not only horror, I mean, horror is having a heyday, but body horror too is starting to take hold. Eraserhead is released just 2 years before.
David Cronenberg's doing his thing.
Yeah, Cronenberg's, well into his career at this point. And I don't think body horror is like a huge genre yet, but, it's certainly getting there, and Alien is part of that movement.
The other thing that I was thinking about too, I couldn't help but shake. I've never been able to shake this detail about Alien is the reveal of Ash as sort of a secondary villain in this movie. I think it's one of the reasons why Alien is still such a classic is because it is rooted not only in just being this sort of great sci-fi horror movie with this very iconic creature, but that the villain also happens to be there's this human element to the villain as well. That there's this corporation that is trying to look out for this alien, is trying to protect it and trying to keep it alive so that they can harness whatever biological traits or study it for their own purposes.
For those who haven't seen the film, I mean, Ash is an android. He's which in this movie I think they just refer to as robot, and then in Aliens you get like
synthetic,
which
apparently Bishop is not happy about.
Yeah, I think he said artificial human.
You feel for Bishop in the way that you can arguably feel for the replicants in Blade Runner.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. I don't think though Ash deserves a whole lot of our sympathy.
Absolutely
in this
not.
movie. He's pretty despicable.
Even before his motivations are revealed, we get these kind of hints of him just being an asshole.
Yeah.
Like we see, we talked earlier about him letting in the people who have been outside on LV-426. But when Ripley confronts him about this later, and she's like, why did you do that? When Dallas is off ship, I'm senior officer. And his response is, oh, yes, I forgot. And that infuriated me so much. I was like, shoot him into space at this point. Like, he gets no more chances after that.
Absolutely. No, and he definitely kind of pulls rank on her, too. He's like, well, I'm the science officer. And this is a science concern. So, I mean, he's pretty brutal. I think what I was going to say, too, is that his reveal is obviously this really great sort of extra place of tension and kind of this part of the story that really ramps things up. The the way that Ash tries to kill Ripley and silence her is shockingly similar to what the facehugger does, which is he tries to suffocate her by ramming something down her throat, which I think is a rolled up adult magazine.
Yeah, it's a rolled up magazine of some sort, and that makes sense because they're in sort of this little corner with like nude photos.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think I remember just sort of seeing it. It's like, there's some pinup or something in there, but he rolls it up, and it's so funky too, and it also sort of oddly plays into this weird thing where it's like, he's a robot. And what is he learning about his environment? He just spent all this time studying this crazy alien that is basically impregnating some other person. And so in his mind, it's all scrambled up, but he's like, I'm going to ram this thing down this person's throat too. And I just find that to be such a weird detail. And the first couple of times I saw it, I was like, man, if he's that strong, why doesn't he just choke her or something?
Yeah.
But it's that, I don't know. It's weird. Every time I think about it, that detail is equal parts weird, equal parts very creative, and just leaves you with this very unsettling sense of like, what is this creature and how is it it's malfunctioning in this really intense way.
And then in the very next beat, you find out he's full of milk.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. And there's a really interesting shot that I noticed on rewatch where the milk is dripping down like as sweat. And then it shoots to Ripley, and she has a nosebleed. And it's such an interesting, like, here she is. She bleeds red. She's human. He is a synthetic robot, artificial human, and he's sweating milk.
And the alien bleeds acid, which I also thought's very interesting. That the two villains, sort of the way that they bleed is sort of their introduction to us. Yeah. That, oh man, once we see how they bleed, they become clear and present dangers to the crew.
Very good point.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, we don't learn that Ash is a robot until his demise. We spend most of the movie thinking that he's a human, just like the rest of the crew. But he's easily the least sympathetic character of the bunch.
Yeah, and they really just massacre him, and like I love that he absolutely had it coming. I find it really satisfying when they sort of like reactivate his head to prod information out of him.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He kind of ends his moment. He just ends with that shit-eating grin.
Yeah.
He's like, you have my sympathies.
Yeah. I kind of wonder how they shot that. Or did they just place Ian Holmes' head in in a hole or at the top of a hole or something?
I feel like I could totally, if you watch it,
you can see
on
they cut
rewatch.
away creatively.
On rewatch, I think you can see like a mold, like a recreation of his head. That is one that I think you can move around and lift up, and then it sort of will shoot over to he's clearly under a table with his head like up through a hole.
Totally
in that shot.
It's a little transparent, and I think to modern audiences when you watch it, it maybe reads a little bit like, oh yeah, I see the seams on this. I'm going to say though, and this is something that when we talk about aliens, I'm going to definitely carry over, but I just love practical effects in movies.
Absolutely.
So much, and this is one of the kind of hallmark practical effect movies, right? Like all of the creature designs, all of the chest bursting scene. It is visceral, and I think you feel it so much more because it's really happening, even if it is a dummy or even if it's someone's head who's shoved under a table or something. There's something about it, like it's real blood spurting everywhere. I mean, famously, Veronica Cartwright, Lambert, her character is shot in the face with a bunch of blood, and there's a reaction shot of her just running back or being pushed back, and she's like screaming and trying to get the blood out of her eyes, and apparently that was a malfunction. It wasn't supposed to happen. And so that her response is very real. I don't know, man. This is one of those movies where you really, really can feel the practical effects, but in a really exciting way.
And we made so many comparisons to Star Wars early on, not comparisons, but we kind of set this movie up in the realm of Star Wars coming out a couple of years later. And George Lucas, once you get to the prequels, is very anti-practical effects.
Totally. He's like, how can we do this where everyone gets to stay in California, stay close to home.
Where I can stay on my ranch.
Exactly. I can stay on my ranch and
Right.
You're right about that for sure. So one of the reasons we're having this conversation is because when we were first talking about movies that we were all interested in or topics that we'd love to talk about, Julian mentioned how he loved Alien, but was not that big a fan of Aliens.
Whereas you and I are huge Aliens.
We are huge Aliens fans. So why don't we shift the conversation slightly over to Aliens? Julian, we'll address some of your maybe amended thoughts or pre-amended thoughts.
Yeah.
But Madeline, why don't you talk to us a little bit about Aliens $?
Yes. So I do want to start by talking about the classic James Cameron pitch. I'm going to pitch this movie to you guys. So we're going to go back to the 1980s and we are going to sit in a boardroom and a little young Jim Cameron, who is only, very early on in his career, is walking up to the front of the room, goes up to a chalkboard and writes Alien. Great movie. We all talked about how much we love it. And he adds an S, Aliens, and then he turns that S into a $. Ka-ching! I love this pitch. It is so Jim Cameron.
Yeah. Definitely is. I mean, an early Jim Cameron too, like you say. Yeah.
He had that moxie from day one.
Totally.
And this movie, I think, from reading, was in development hell for a long time. And he was so adamant about what he wanted. But let's talk a little bit about the story of Aliens. So we open with a slow pan of the interior of the shuttle that Ripley escaped on at the end of the last film. And I love the design they do with the fact that it's like frozen over. It's like very sparkly. But we get this kind of slow pan across, and a salvage team is opening up.
Oh, yeah. The opposite of welding.
Yeah, whatever the opposite of welding is.
Yeah.
A salvage team is essentially like drilling into the door, and they find her and are actually like disappointed that they find her alive, because this seemingly is a team that seems like maybe not too different from our team from the first film.
Totally.
Like they're just sort of here to scrap for parts. I don't think they were expecting any survivors. They don't even really seem like equipped for that. We don't see that much of them, but essentially like they find her, she and Jonesy are alive. She gets taken to the infirmary and she wakes up and they reveal to her that it has been 57 years.
Good Lord.
Since she left the Nostromo. And I believe it was, we get an estimate at the end of Alien on how long it's supposed to take, and I think it says 3 years. So we don't know exactly what went wrong, but it's been 57 years.
Long time.
Long time. And at this point, the company that we constantly see alluded to in the first movie, the company, all they care about is their lost capital of the Nostromo. They don't care about all of the dead crew members. They don't care that only one person made it out alive 57 years ago. They only care about the fact that they lost this like $80 million whatever. They lost this incredibly expensive spaceship.
Totally.
And so they're essentially putting her on trial where she has to defend herself and saying like, we were being attacked by a vicious alien who was killing everyone. And they either do not believe her or they do not care.
Yeah, she doesn't have very many allies there in that room.
Yeah.
I will say one other thing too, just small detail, which is, I don't know why, but the PowerPoint presentation that flips through the pictures of the people that passed away, kind of nostalgic.
Yeah.
You know, you
Definitely.
watch it and you're like, oh man, I remember what happened to those people. They were really hanging in there.
You would think the original cast would have been mentioned in the credits of Aliens too because of that. And actually one point I want to make about that scene too, and this is, a little superfluous to the movie itself, but I thought that the guy at the head of that table in that meeting looked a lot like Ron DeSantis.
Oh.
Yeah. I also think his name was Van Leeuwen, which I thought was very funny, like the ice cream.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But what they say to Ripley at this point, because they're essentially trying to convince her that she's crazy, is that there's been a colony on LV-426 for 20 years and they're doing just fine. And then we get kind of a time jump And essentially, we had met this company man. We met Burke.
Paul Reiser.
We met, enter Paul Reiser as Burke. We met him. He was the one to reveal to her that it's been 57 years. But he comes back and visits her a while later and tells her, like, we've lost communication with the colony on LV-426. And we're sending a team of Marines down to investigate, and we need you. And she's like, hell no. Get away from me.
Yeah. Exactly.
But
are you crazy?
But he essentially, like, convinces her because she has lost her rank.
Right. She's been demoted.
Yeah, due to what happened. And he essentially says, like, you can become...
I can get you reinstated.
Yeah, I can get you reinstated. You can become an officer again if you go. And so he convinces her to go. We meet this team of Marines who at first I'm very skeptical of, but some of them do really grow on me throughout the movie.
It's part of the charm of them, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So she reluctantly agrees. She leaves Jonesy behind.
Very notably.
Smart move.
Yeah. You don't need that extra thing, that anvil around your neck.
Yeah.
Emotional anvil.
Totally. I hope she has a good cat sitter, though, because I think she's going to be gone a while.
I think so, too.
And that was... I have a question about if the sleep pods stop aging them or if it slows the aging.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's that important of a detail, but I was thinking this, like, obviously she's human and she looks pretty much the same, but this is 7 years later. This is not, in reality, this is 1986. So she looks a little older. So I'm just curious about that.
Can you imagine, though, what kind of industry that would be in the future if you're like, yo, get in these sleep pods and you don't age?
Yeah. But you're also
that's like
asleep. You also don't live.
That's
much.
true. But can you imagine how many people would still do that if
totally.
if they could find out that or if somebody has like cancer or something and they're like, I want to sleep for 30 years and see if in 30 years we have a cure for cancer.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you miss a lot in that time span, though.
Well,
if you have like family,
it takes all kinds of people, and I'm sure some there's a large enough amount of the population who'd turn that into a $1 billion industry. Anyway, continue.
So we fly on over to LV-426 with the Marines, and we touch down, and we find the colony deserted. No signs of life until a little scuttling little girl appears, and she goes by the name of Newt. She's very, very afraid, very standoffish, and seems to be the only survivor from this colony. She becomes our Jonesy.
Totally.
And maybe even more so.
Yeah, definitely.
But after they continue to investigate the base, they essentially find an entire hive of xenomorphs that wipes out the majority of the crew. We have a select few survivors that continue throughout the mission. And at this point, they're just trying to figure out how to escape. Ripley knows enough, and they were skeptical of her at first, but she has convinced them of enough that they know they have no chance.
And they also
They've now
seen the
with their own eyes.
Awesome power of these aliens. And yeah, totally. Yeah.
Early on in the Marine introductions, they're like kind of, they're gossiping about her. And one of them is like, oh yeah, she saw an alien once. Like they're very skeptical.
I'm also slightly curious because Bill Paxton's character in that movie, he kind of jumps in and he's like, are we on another bug hunt? And so I'm trying to figure out
or do aliens exist or not? Because the company board was so like brushed her off entirely. Yeah. Like these don't exist.
Totally. Or they're like, oh, okay, maybe if they do, but they're like harmless or they're like herbivores or whatever. I don't know. So yeah, I was slightly curious about that too. Yeah.
So I think I may need help remembering this, but I think the Marines we have left after the initial encounter with the xenomorph hive is obviously we have Ripley and we have Burke. And then when it comes to the Marines, we have Hicks, we have Hudson, we have Vasquez. And I think we have one more.
Gorman.
Yeah.
Right. Gorman.
Yeah. Who's wounded after the initial encounter, but is not dead.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's also sort of one of those characters that is introduced. When you first meet him, he and Burke are kind of buddy-buddy. Mm-hmm. But then when they're actually deployed onto the planet, he reveals that he is kind of a rookie himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they ask him, like, how many drops have you been on? And he's like, 38 simulated. Yeah. This is my second real one.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's not really Mr. Take Charge, even though he, I think, is injured in a moment where he tries to take charge, but Ripley beats him to it because she's a badass.
Yeah. And he, at this point, yells at her to shut up, which, again, I'm like, why? These men talk to her like she's nothing. It's so annoying.
Yeah. Although Hudson
and Hicks, and Hicks
Yeah.
really have this kind of flirtation that I really buy into, that I like a lot.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking I've got Hudson
Hudson
and
is Bill
Hicks mixed up.
Paxton.
Yeah. Hudson is, yeah.
But
Clever
yeah.
age.
But yeah, she and Hicks like have this kind of flirtation where they bond a bit. But I think even Hudson seems kind of harmless. Like when I say like these men, I mean specifically this lieutenant and then Mr. Robot from the last one.
Yeah,
Right.
Robot.
Yeah, I guess in the case of aliens, that's Bishop this time.
Yeah, so we also meet Bishop, who is our robot, synthetic. He prefers artificial human. And she is so skeptical of him because she had a very bad experience
With the past one.
with the past one.
Yeah.
And he asks some questions about like the model and everything. And he's essentially saying like, oh yeah, no, I totally understand. Like those models, they were erratic. Like, but it couldn't happen. Like I can't harm people. And she is so skeptical. She's like, bullshit. Like
Totally.
I don't trust you.
Throughout the movie too, I love how until the very end, she is super skeptical of him the whole way.
Yeah.
In fact, in multiple moments, she will be like, yeah, that's wonderful, but how is this actually going to help? Like she immediately is challenging his authority, is immediately, throughout the film, is really kind of side-eyeing him too. Every time he's like, I'm going to go back to my studies. She's like, studies for what, dude? Yeah. You are a snake in the grass.
Because she thinks that he is going to try to take a baby xenomorph back for study.
Right.
But it is not him that is trying to do this. It is Burke. And not for study, but for selling it to the military.
Totally. Yeah, he goes super rogue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Another moment towards the end with Bishop is that the movie actually doesn't fully convince us either about his trustworthiness.
Totally.
I like Bishop a lot, but you could see it turning. It's like at the moment where we've got this big, essentially like, they are about to escape. At this point, like we've lost a few more, and it's Ripley, Newt, Hicks, and Bishop. It's just the four of them. They're trying to get onto the ship, and they lose Newt. Newt gets like sucked down an air shaft. And Ripley says, she says, I have to go after her. Like we can't let her go. The aliens, they don't kill, which it's not what we've seen. We've seen them kill
it's a little convenient.
A lot.
Little convenient that they're like, ooh, let's use Newt as a host.
We've seen them kill everyone up until this point.
Yeah. Although I will say, and I'll say it again a little bit later, I'm sure, that scene of her getting taken is also one of the all-time visuals from this whole series of movies is that the alien, the xenomorph, emerging from the water.
Oh,
behind
yeah.
her. Oh man, again, the practical, everything in camera, man. I mean, that is the visual of that with the tail coming out and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Man,
Yeah.
it's just, oh man, it's
I
it's
agree.
wonderful. It's so good. It's terrifying and also just catnip, I feel. It's really good on the subject of cats. No Jonesy.
Yeah.
But certain visual catnip for sci-fi film
But you're
fans.
going, like Ripley insists on going after Newt. And because she's convinced she's alive, she does turn out to be right. But she tells Hicks, like, do not let Bishop leave.
Yeah.
Now Ripley is successful in rescuing Newt. She happens across the mother xenomorph, which is a new design that's very fun and disturbing.
They plant like a small seed of that earlier where they're like, where are all these eggs coming from?
Yeah. Who's laying them?
Exactly. Yeah. And it pays off in that big scene at the end.
Yeah. Basically, she has rescue Newt at this point. They're running from the mother xenomorph, and they burst out onto the landing pad, and the ship's gone. And she's like, "Damn you, Bishop!" Like,
Great line.
yeah, like. You're like, damn it. Like, I was rooting for him. But then he comes back, like he flies down, and he explains later, he's like, oh, like the landing pad wasn't stable. Like I couldn't stay there. But yeah, I mean, the movie doesn't fully convince you of his trustworthiness until that moment.
I think the movie makes a very clear choice by having him be the selfless one to crawl into that tunnel and make his way all the way out to the middle, or kind of the joint area where he's able to reprogram the transmitter so that they can send down the other ship.
Yeah.
I think they do plant some seeds there to just be like, he's not there to protect this alien. He really wants to get people off this ship.
And a very subtle moment that you get there is that they've reverse soldered open this tunnel, and Vasquez hands him a gun, and he like kind of looks at it, and he just passes it right back off to Ripley. Like, what do I want with it? I don't want this. I'm a science robot.
Yeah, and not a Marine. I will say that the Vasquez character I always thought was so interesting in this movie because it sort of seems like they're kind of going for like an uber version of Ripley, right?
Yeah.
Like at the end of Alien, she is Final Girl-esque, but she also seems, like you say, to actually have some real character to her that proves that she was deserving of being the heroine all along.
Yeah.
And so Vasquez is sort of like the Uber version of that, like the version of Ripley on steroids, who's like actually like maybe saw Alien in theaters years ago and was like, yo man, Ripley is my, I stand for Ripley or whatever. And so she's now kind of turned herself into this like super macho Marine. And I kind of love how her character and Ripley, they don't do a whole lot of interacting with one another in the movie, but I love that what she represents also. She's sort of like the female in amongst all the males in the Marine.
Yeah, she's the woman Marine. You get one other female Marine who's like a pilot, but Vasquez is the only one who's on the ground with them.
Spunkmeyer, I think is her name.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vasquez has developed a lot more than Spunkmeyer.
Totally.
And has that really memorable exchange with Hudson, like when she's introduced in the movie where I think Hudson asks, have you ever been mistaken for a man? And she says, no, have you?
Yeah. Yeah, just zing right out of the gate.
Yeah.
I also love, man, her and Drake. They have like such a bromance.
Yeah.
They're like they're like looking out for one another. And I also love it too, because it sort of makes sense. Not only does it seem like character-wise they're very simpatico, but they actually have the same job amongst the Marines. They're the ones that have those.
They're
like,
the firepower.
Steadicam.
Yeah.
They're the first ones. It's like that weird
Yeah.
Steadicam machine gun, but they're the first ones out. So they're like really, really macho. They're really like testosterone driven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
They're
they're
first
like
wave.
They are like brother sister in arms, and
Yeah.
it's kind of it's funny because every chance the movie has early on to create their relationship, it totally takes. Like every time they're in frame with one another, they're like giving each other
best buds.
Exactly, and they're like, we're the
Chest bump.
Exactly, chest bump, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So right away when the big attack happens and Drake is the one who is mortally wounded right outside of their ship, there is supposed to be some sort of emotional moment there too that hopefully Vasquez brings with her when she's like, she has to make her last stand.
Yeah,
later.
like this is a team, much like our crew from the last film. Like, I mean, we are just being introduced to them. Like, we know way more about Ripley at this point, but these Marines, like, seemingly they've been on a lot of these missions together. Like, they have kind of built this family with each other.
I will say too, one of the things that I remember from the commentary is that James Cameron talked about how he was really influenced in the design and also sort of conceptually about the Marines he was heavily influenced by Vietnam and the fact that they have stuff on their they've etched stuff on their helmets. They have phrases and stuff all over their body armor. They've kind of individualized. There's a little bit of this feeling of they're this crack team of Marines that are either so good or have such a unique job that they're kind of left to their own devices. And so there's a lot of individuality that comes out through their characterizations and also their wardrobe. So there's a little bit of that's kind of Vietnam based, where, Vietnam 2 similarly was a lot of not a lot of oversight with a lot of the troops and stuff there. And so you saw a lot of that kind of stuff taking place. But then also just conceptually this idea that, these Marines are coming from the USA and that they're really humbled by this enemy that they don't know that much
that they don't understand.
Right. And that what makes the enemy very dangerous to them is something that they weren't at all prepared for.
Yeah.
And so that there's something about the Marines and that's something too, going back to this movie I found was really funny. This is not a really pro-military movie.
Oh yeah, definitely not.
Yeah, it's like, another movie that year in 1986 that I think is one of the most famous pro-military movies is Top Gun, right? Like that movie is literally...
That is military propaganda.
A walking advertisement for y'all should join the Air Force because you get to be Tom Cruise
Look
and
how
Val
cool
Kilmer.
you would be.
Exactly.
Platoon is the same year, though.
Totally. And yes, you're right. And this seems to sort of exist... and kind of borrow a little bit from both. You're right.
Yeah.
The Platoon comp is a good one, where in certain moments, the Marines are seen as, just like very capable, and the cigar chomping Sergeant Apone.
I love the second out of the sleep pod. That's like, it's like he had it ready.
I love that detail too. I love it as well. Yeah. But that it juxtaposes this implied ability that the Marine and capability that the Marines have with also them kind of being like overgrown children. Like,
oh, totally.
There are those scenes where like they first find the alien blood that has kind of seeped through the different levels of the colony area, and it literally is like they're like, oh yeah, they're checking it out, and then Hudson is like, he gets pushed or something by Vasquez. He's like, don't do that. Yeah. And it's like, they're just like overgrown kids.
And then somebody like spits down.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's funny. It's like, it kind of has a little bit of both, but it does it in a really funny way, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so you're never really expected, as much as you want to root for these guys, you're also not really told that the Marines are all that good at their job. They think they're good at it, but they're humbled again by nature, or by the nature in the universe that they just don't know and don't understand yet.
Mm-hmm. I have a question, which is on rewatch and maybe just watches in general. Did you guys watch the director's cut or the theatrical cut?
Theatrical
all day.
I also watched the theatrical cut because I just watched it on Hulu. But apparently, the director's cut adds a lot more background with Newt. We meet her family. We also learn of Ripley having a daughter who has died during the 57 years, presumably, I think.
So that's one of the things when I went and rewatched the movie for this conversation, I was positive that was something that was in the version that I saw before. What I'll say is I don't think I've seen the director's cut, so it's probably just from having read about it and knowing that there was some backstory in there about that. But I mean, that is a really consequential detail. Yeah. Because that really becomes Ripley's drive through the last sort of act of the film. Yeah. Is that she's like, I didn't have a relationship with my daughter. Yeah. I'm going to save this poor little girl.
Save Newt by any means necessary.
Absolutely.
Like, I will sacrifice myself for that. And I don't think I've seen the director's cut either, but I've heard like that it really does just like round out the emotional resonance. And I'm like now adding that to my list. Like I need to rewatch this yet again to watch the director's cut.
Yeah. I mean, it's really cool. And I think a lot of the changes that James Cameron brought to it, I mean, obviously, the original is way more of a horror film. And this I think, obviously has some horror elements. Mm-hmm. There's some some very striking, terrifying visuals that I think they worked very hard to capture.
Yeah, and when you meet the mother xenomorph, I feel like that whole scene of like once Ripley has found Newt and they're trying to escape and they see this mother and all of these eggs, and I feel like that moment in particular, I'm like, we're back to horror movie. Like it just puts like a pit in my stomach.
Absolutely, yeah. And it definitely, there are moments where it seems to pivot back and forth between sci-fi
Genre,
adventure, military style romp, and then like you say, just straight up horror. But yeah, this movie definitely seems to be more driven as an action movie. And one of the things that I also thought about too, and we were talking about Jerry Goldsmith's score for the original Alien and James Horner's score for this movie is so much more like propulsive, and there's so much more momentum in everything that's going on, and it's definitely, it seems to certainly be a score that it's not a quiet one that has these sudden bursts of energy and mania. It is a score that, for the most part, is just pumping, and seems to be paired with the fact that the characters in this movie also, there's so much more momentum to the characters. There's so much more that they're here, they're there, they're doing this. They've gone through this struggle. Now they're in this space. Now they're being attacked by this. So there's so much more action, and that you can hear actually in the score too.
Yeah, it feels much more like a John Williams score at times. Not to say that it sounds exactly like John Williams, because it doesn't, but there are some moments, particularly I think with the first sort of phase of alien attacks, that moment when Ripley decides to get into that armored vehicle and drive to rescue them. That felt like a very John Williams-esque moment.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah, but the difference also lies in the fact that there remains some dissonance in the James Horner score. Notably, there's a scene where Michael Biehn's character Hicks, he's looking up through a ceiling pane, and he's shining a flashlight, and then the moment that the light hits the aliens crawling through that crawl space, if there's just this great moment of dissonance there.
Totally.
Just unforgettable if you see it. And then famously, James Horner had worked under very tight constraints to write that score, that he showed up on the set, I think in a timely manner, but they were still so occupied with shooting that he was given only 6 weeks until the release of the movie to write that score. And it seemed clear from there that James Cameron and Gail Ann Hurd did not have a good sense of how much time a composer needs to write a score. So they are partly to blame for that. And so then James Horner was put in this situation where he had to stay up for many sleepless nights just to get that score done. But they kind of so while it was a contentious writing period, they did have a reapproachment later, and obviously James Horner went on to score Titanic. But it's just one of those sort of legendary sort of production headache stories.
Totally.
Yeah.
I was going to say too, going back to the original thing I mentioned, is this whole conversation started because Julian, you said the first time you saw Aliens, you were like, I don't get the hype. I'm not really buying it. Can you talk a little bit to your first initial reactions, and then maybe what has changed in having seen it again for this conversation?
Yes, absolutely. So I think for my first viewing of it, one sense in which I did get the hype is I see how it's, expanding the universe created in the first Alien. I see how on a practical level, this is just showing you more of that. So I think it absolutely delivered on that level. But I think what I was not super sold by the first time around mostly had to do with the plotting of the story. And there were some moments, mainly that there were a few moments in Aliens that I thought felt very familiar to the first movie. And I've, my sense of it is certainly amended with time. But some of the things that I thought were a little bit rehashed were, well, I think that having, there be that sort of corporate character who was, serving the interests of the company rather than the people. I think I felt the first time that Burke was just kind of a secondary Ash, and that the choice to make him human rather than a robot was a little bit a little cheap in my opinion.
Humans are the real monster.
Right. Yeah, I think the second time I didn't feel as much that way, but the first time I definitely thought that was a bit of a cheap move, alongside making the robot a sympathetic character now. I think like I sort of got what they were going for, but thought like, oh, that's not super subtle. That was one thing that I noticed. I think that just as well, like some of the shocks and the scares of the movie, I thought felt a little familiar too, like the fact that, you know, the first time you see a xenomorph, it is as a chest burster, in a scene that actually reminded me very much, if you guys have seen Seven, of the sloth scene in that movie. Oh,
totally, yeah.
Where it's like a moment where you think the character's dead and it turns out this corpse-looking figure is in fact alive.
And is waiting, or it's a host waiting to have its chest burst open.
Yeah, that was definitely a scary scene. But
can I ask you real quick?
Yes.
In terms of the scares,
mm-hmm.
the other moment in this movie that to me visually is like, how in God's name did they do it? Is when Bishop is impaled by the tail of the. I love that. I mean, that scene to me is like, I don't know how they. Sometimes you watch it and you're like, okay, I can kind of see the seams here. I legitimately don't know how they did that. That is an incredible death scene, obviously, because, well, you know, he doesn't die. But oh my God, I mean, I don't know. To me, like that scene is an all timer for me. Like, But anyway, so you're saying some of those scenes and some of the kind of scares and stuff felt a little recycled.
And then another point to that effect was that I think the finale of Aliens, I thought, you know, they just took a little too much from the first movie where, so they escape LV-426. They are on this vessel that's supposed to be safe. And then turns out the xenomorph has followed them along. Yeah. And then they have this showdown, which ends with the xenomorph not being mortally wounded, but ejected into the vacuum of space.
Into space, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that...
And then after that, they, you know, get back into their sleep pods, and you get pretty much the exact same ending shot as you do in Alien, except for this time, like, in Alien at the end, you see Ripley and her sleep pod, and in this one, you see Ripley, and then next to her is Newt and her little sleep pod. I actually kind of like the full circle element of this, but I understand why it would feel like you're just sort of rehashing.
Yeah, and I think the first time I saw the movie, I was kind of hung up on those details. I've mentioned it to you before, but I also, the first time I watched the movie, I happened to be kind of half asleep too. I was watching it very late at night. And so that definitely, you know, it dwindled my attention to some of the finer details of the movie, but I think I had enough presence of mind still to come to those conclusions. Now, watching it the second time, I definitely was not as hung up on those things. I think some of the things that struck me as kind of rehashes the first time struck me more as just world building the second time. This is just how this universe works. Like the fact of, you know, the alien emerging as a chest burster. I thought more the second time, oh yeah, this is just the logic of how the xenomorphs evolve.
Yeah, it's like this is how they work. Like this, we're gonna see this again because that's how they procreate.
Yeah. And additionally, like looking at the Burke character, I think I was more into him the second time around because you're kind of, because he's the corporate character, you're kind of given reason to think early on in the movie that this guy might go rogue.
Yeah.
And you see, in fact, that he does. And to see the change in Paul Reiser's acting as he goes through that, I think it's pretty compelling.
Yeah, it's like Ripley is skeptical of him from the beginning, sort of similarly to our robot from the first one, similar to Ash, as you alluded to. But he, and another similarity is that he has this infantilization of her. He calls her kiddo.
He's also the most toxic male. Yeah. He's like a gaslighter. He's like, I expected more of you.
Oh, he's a really hate that. And he really like ugly, when he's trying to convince her to go back to LV-426, he like negs her. Totally. He's like, oh, like I hear you're working the forklifts. That's great for you.
Yeah.
And I hate that. He calls her kiddo at least twice, and I want to smack him both times. And yes, there are similarities with like Ash made me feel that same way in the first one, but I actually I hate Burke. Like I feel more strongly for Burke as a villain than actually I do for Ash. Ash.
Well, also because Ash is not.
He's
not really autonomous. He Burke has the ability to make these decisions, but you know,
he is selfish, whereas
Exactly.
Ash is programmed to
respond to orders.
Yeah, Ash is programmed to follow orders. Ash is programmed to do what the company tells him to do. Burke is choosing to do what the company tells him to do, and is choosing to look out for his own best interest.
And I think that those wrinkles are why, to me, I responded positively to the change there, how there's a human element now that's the most corrupted, and that the robot is actually the one who is on their side the whole time.
And it's adding to all of these points about Burke's character. I mean, like Paul Reiser in real life, I think he's probably a little physically shorter than Sigourney Weaver.
He's 7 years younger.
Sigourney Weaver, I think she's a legit 6-footer.
Yeah, and he's quite a bit younger than her too. So to just make him like this character who is in, you know, a few very salient ways inferior to her, kind of adds to his antagonism.
He's definitely younger than her because Homegirl is like 80
she's
something years
80
old.
years old at this point.
It's almost like Lord of the Rings like aging, where you learn that Aragorn is 87, even though Viggo Mortensen is nothing close to that.
Totally.
But yeah, so like a number of details on the second time around that I thought were flaws the first time, they didn't, you know, sit quite the same way with me the second time. Even the finale too, I was more into it the second time. I think that maybe because I was, you know, just literally more awake watching it the second time, I could let the adrenaline flow a little bit more through all of the different encounters with the aliens. And so I think I was into it a little more in kind of an edge of the seat way. So that in the end, when they have this finale that is not completely the same, but familiar to the finale of the first movie, I was just kind of like into it more in a like, you know, kind of almost saying when Ripley iconically says, "Get away from her, you bitch," like almost saying that along with her, like, "Do it, Ripley, do it."
Yeah, I love the fight with like
girl.
her and the cargo loader.
I love it too.
Yeah.
It is a classic showdown, definitely. And I also like it too because it is an example of the escalation, I think, that takes place. And I think it's a very James Cameron-esque touch, which is that he kind of introduces this world now where there's more kind of technology, there's military's using all this stuff, and so you see, and the seed is planted earlier of that like loader, the kind of human looking loader that kind of allows them to sort of lift up a ton of weight and stuff, but that she shows her proficiency with that, and then it gets paid off beautifully at the end.
And the implication is that she knows how to work this because that's the job that she was kind of demoted to. And that's like what Burke is negging her about earlier. And it's like, you and your little forklift.
It also, I love that scene because we were talking earlier about Apone. I mean, that guy has the best line readings in the whole movie.
Totally.
When he's just like, haha, Bay 12, please. You know, and she's like, where do you want it? Or the other one I love when he goes, when Hudson says something, so how do I get out of this chicken shit outfit? He's like, you secure that shit, Hudson. I love the line, you secure that shit. I don't know why, but there's
such good just one-liners in this. I mean, James Cameron, we were talking about this before recording yesterday, that James Cameron is just like king of the one-liners. Like
real hit or miss when it comes to the 30,000 foot view of dialogue.
Yeah.
But he can really land some moments.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's this one that I wrote down that's like just a one-off line that I think from Hudson, and I don't even remember what it's in reference to, but he says, "Stop your grinning and drop your linen."
Nice. That's good.
I love it. And Bill Paxton he delivers that so well.
He's a funny character in this movie because I remember talking to people in the past where he's definitely some comedic relief.
Yeah.
He is a bit of a foil to the typical energy of the military. He's the one who seems to kind of mentally cave the fastest when everything seems to go wrong. And I think some people respond to him and they kind of love him. And then other people sort of look at him like he's Jar Jar Binks in The Phantom Menace or something, where he's this sort of weight on the movie where you're like, you just get pulled out of it every time he's like, oh, game over, man, game over.
Which apparently, though, like he and Cameron discussed that game over line, and the intention that they put behind this is that he had been trained on simulations. And so,
I like that.
And Paxton has spoken about, like, he was afraid that he was just going to be annoying, that people were just going to find Hudson annoying, because he is kind of annoying, but he's also the comedic relief. And I think Paxton's great in this. I think he's so fun.
I do too. And I also think in a lot of ways, his arc, he is a negative Nelly throughout this. He is the one who starts panicking the fastest, but his character also does sort of have a redemptive arc. Yeah. Because he does freak out, but then he's also the one who pulls up the plans that allow them to, contact the ship. And he pulls it together. He's some kind of like tech officer or something. He's the one who
he's the tech guy.
Yeah, he's the tech guy.
He breaks into the door. He hacks into the door.
This is my first time watching it where I actually was like, what does he do? And he does, and he's pretty good.
Yeah.
And so that's I think one of the things that I think does redeem him slightly is that yes, he's kind of a ham. Yes, he seems to chew up the scenery a little bit with his line readings, but his character is rather important and does have a prominent role in how the film eventually sort of the direction it ends up going in.
Yeah, and then going back now to kind of like what I thought were flaws the first time around. So most of those were redeemed for me the second time. I think I had a more focused viewing of it the second time around, and I really could see a lot of the conventional hype around Aliens. I was along for the ride. Having said that, though, there were a few things that keep me from saying it's a perfect movie. There's definitely a few flaws. And also, like, probably what stood out to me the most this time was actually had to do with the character Vasquez, in that she is whitewashed. And I did a little Google search after watching the movie just to kind of get a sense of what people think about that character in general. And there are a number of people who would say, in spite of the whitewashing, that they sympathize with the character and enjoy watching her still.
I always sort of took her character as just being a super heightened version of what like Ripley represents, which is, or she's the military version of Ripley, where she's like, I'm in a world with a bunch of dudes who don't really take me seriously, or some of them do and then some of them don't. I've had to work twice as hard to be in the position with a bunch of these other guys, and so to me, I don't know. I see it, and I also just sort of feel like that's part of what happens with a lot of these movies. Is you just sort of have to go like, okay, all right, and hopefully now we've kind of moved on a little bit more. And when this movie gets rebooted, if it ever does, that they're actually going to have a Latina actress playing that character.
And you can even see this actually happen in Avatar, which has so many similarities. I like Aliens so much more than I like Avatar, but Cameron returns to a lot of the same beats, and one of which I know, Emilio, you haven't seen Avatar, but Michelle Rodriguez as a character in Avatar is very similar to Vasquez. Like, she is the one, like, Latina who's in this military complex with all of these men, and she is one of the few that ends up siding with our hero in Avatar. So I think about how Cameron does kind of like do this again and do it better with an actual like Latina actress.
He seems to, but one of the things that I thought about too, just in trying to contextualize Aliens, is like where this movie sits in his filmography. And I find it to be a really interesting one where, like you say, there are a lot of elements that present themselves in Avatar from Aliens. And I think this is also one of those seeds where he has shown that he loves to portray strong female characters. The Terminator came out a few years before this, but Sarah Connor is a little bit of a final girl in that movie too, you know. Obviously, you know, shows her character strength by the end of the film, but then really plays it out, and we see it played out fully in Terminator 2. But then even in The Abyss, you know, the Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio character, whose name I can't remember, but she is 100% the equal to Ed Harris in that movie, and a lot of the emotional core of the film has to do with decisions that she makes, you know, and so yeah, we see that this is going to become a staple, I think, of his storytelling, is that he wants to put strong female characters right at the front of the story, or at the center of the story.
Yeah, and can we talk for a moment about Sigourney Weaver's performance in Aliens? Because, I mean, we already know she's great from Alien, but even in Aliens, they really add even more dimension to Ripley, where there's more of this PTSD element to her character.
Absolutely.
And so, like, some of those moments, like that moment when she is watching a chest burster emerge on a screen, and you see her just
Grab,
retch.
her own chest because she's been having these nightmares.
Exactly. Like, just that's like an amazing acting moment. And there's a lot of this, like, I think one of the great strengths of the early scenes of Aliens before everyone is deployed to LV-426 again, is that in those opening scenes, you really see that aspect of her character on full display as well, in her standoffishness. And you get a sense that her being standoffish to Burke is partially just because, you know, that he is just this awful human being, but also that she, you know, you get a sense that, you know, she's a little bit equal opportunity with that standoffishness, that like almost anyone could receive that from her because of the state that she's in.
And ultimately the only person, I mean, not throughout the whole movie, but the first person she ends up being drawn to is Newt, because Newt's the only other person at this point who has any experience with the xenomorphs. They're going through this PTSD together. Like, Newt also shares that, like, she can't sleep because she has these nightmares.
Yeah, that's a very touching scene too, that one where they go to the lab or whatever, and she tries to get her to fall asleep, and then she sleeps with her and stuff. Being the father of a 3.5-year-old who cannot fall asleep without the presence of one of his parents, I was sort of felt seen by that. Hope my son never has to go through anything like Newt experienced ever in life. But yeah, I definitely saw that and was like, yeah, it's a touching scene, and like you say, it is a really nice way to develop the character and to flesh Ripley out more. And one of the things that I just love about Aliens is I do feel like it completely solidifies Ripley as the one character that's going to be the staple character through the franchise. Like, it is unmistakably her story going forward, and that she is unmistakably the heroine of this series.
But yes, Sigourney Weaver in Aliens. Notably, she was nominated for an Oscar for that performance.
Unheard of in movies like this.
Definitely.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, I think deservingly nominated for an Oscar, which she was not for Alien. Also, just for a moment, I have to say the tagline "In space, no one can hear you scream" is just so iconic.
Yeah,
and they must be so glad not only that they claimed that tagline, but simply to have claimed the title Alien. I mean, it was going to happen sooner or later. And for this to be the movie that did it, I think that is a great landmark in film history.
Yeah, I think I remember reading somewhere that no movie prior to that movie had even had the word alien anywhere in it. So it was a wholly original title. A really wonderful 1-2 punch, I think. I would personally put... I would give these two movies sort of 10s out of 10.
I love
these are both
movies.
5-star movies for me, for sure. I don't know, Julian, how you feel? But
I think I would certainly give the first one a 10. I think I would give the second one like a 9 or a 9.5. I think Alien is virtually seamless in the way that it's made. I think it really, in terms of writing and craft, I think that I think there's almost no cracks in the facade there. I think it really is a very, just to repeat myself, seamless movie. I think Aliens is an impressive movie on so many levels. It's worth noting that what James Cameron was going for with that movie was incredibly ambitious. And I think because of that ambition, there are just a couple of moments where maybe, the reach exceeds the grasp. So Aliens, maybe it'd be like a 9.5 for me, but still a very high rating. Can I also say that, how many other times in film history have you just been able to tack on the letter S to the first movie?
The letter $,
Yeah.
you mean?
Yeah, just to make it plural.
For me, I think I'm with you, Emilio. Like, these are both 5-star movies for me. I totally hear every point that you're making, and I just have such a fun time with these movies that it's like these kinds of things like don't even really affect me. Like, I have so much fun in these.
I'm glad we're all in agreement that this was a nice topic.
Great fun movies. My last question before we wrap up was going to be if you guys have seen any of the Alien franchise after these two.
Yes, not Alien 3 or Alien Resurrection, but Prometheus, which is a prequel to Alien. And I actually, interestingly, I guess I saw that at the correct point in the timeline because I saw that before either Alien or Aliens. And Prometheus, I think, not having known the franchise before seeing it, I'm sure that that would have shaped my opinion if I had seen those movies previously. But I remember liking it when it came out. That's also when Ridley Scott came back to directing the franchise because he hadn't directed any one of them since the first one. And then 35 years later comes back to direct Prometheus and then its follow-up Alien Covenant, which I haven't seen.
Which is also a prequel. It's like after Prometheus, but before Alien.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen any of the others?
I've seen Alien Resurrection.
Okay.
It's not good.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I've seen Alien 3, and it's not... I remember severely not liking it and being really, really disappointed.
Yeah.
At least we have these two original ones and maybe some of the later ones.
Prometheus.
Yeah, perhaps Prometheus is in there too.
Yeah, and then interestingly, I think it's remarkable how a lot of the first two movies and then Alien 3 as well all fell pretty early in the filmographies of their respective directors, where Alien was only Ridley Scott's second movie, which, God, what a second feature. And then Aliens, I think, was James Cameron's third movie.
He would tell you it's his second because he is just disowned Piranha 2, The Spawn.
Fair enough. And then Alien 3 was David Fincher's first full feature-length directorial effort.
What a set of directors to have for your first 3 movies.
Totally. Guys, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks so much.
Yeah,
We will do it again soon, I'm sure.
This was fun. Thank you so much, guys.